to another episode of the Pop Shock podcast. Today I am Dan and I am joined by Jerd.
Dan and Jerd, danger.
DG boys. I like how I said I'm Dan today as if I'm someone else the rest of the time. That's very topical actually.
Could be on topic for what we're going to be discussing later.
Yeah, right. That's a tease and a half. That's a segue. I unfortunately got hit with COVID last week, so we did not have an episode out last week. Apologies for that. You got 2 legacy episodes instead, but I think they were good ones because one was 2021 and the other one was Spider-Man. So yeah, go and listen to them if you've not yet.
No way.
And today we are doing another kind of routine, up-to-date episode. So we're going to talk about stuff that happened in the last 2 weeks, although we're not going to cover things that you might have already heard a lot about, because there's literally no point in talking about the Oscars or talking about 2 certain actors that are possibly retiring. There's lots already been said about that, so we don't know if there's that much point.
Nothing to add.
Covering it. Although the first thing that I do want to cover, quite a big deal for me, is E3. E3's had an interesting history. E3 used to be, it was like WrestleMania for video games. You know, it was Christmas for gamers. It was like everybody that had a console looked forward to E3 every year because you would get trailers and announcements and a whole lot of cringe, and it was always a good laugh. Watching Joseph Fares swearing at the mic, or watching Keanu walk out on stage, or whatever bullshit gimmicks they've kept up that year was always funny to see. Recently, obviously, due to the pandemic and shit, it has become very much a virtual event, an online-only event. It's quite funny, actually. It's almost kind of like fate. It was always only open to press, people in the industry, video game stuff. I think 2019, if I'm not mistaken, was the first year that it was open to the public, and anybody could buy a ticket and go. Tickets were extremely expensive. I did look into it at the time, but they were just off the chain expensive, and apparently it was an absolute shit show. It was so poorly organised. People were standing in queues for hours to play like 5 minutes of a game, and people were passing out the queue for the heat, and it was just apparently just a shit show.
Is it in the? Well, I guess it doesn't really matter, but is it in the same place all the time?
Yes, it used to be in the same building. I can't remember the name of it, but
somewhere in the States, I take it.
Used to be in the same place in LA every year. I think it's called the Expo Centre or something. But yeah, so yeah. Then of course 2020 happened and it became a virtual event. That was fine. Wasn't as good, but because people weren't playing games and you didn't get the live experience and stuff. And this year it has been cancelled altogether. This year it is not happening. E3 will not go ahead in 2022. It's been officially cancelled. It didn't take place. In fact, I tell a lie. It didn't take place in 2020. It took place in 2019. That was the first year I'm sure that public got invited. 2020 didn't go ahead because that was the height of the pandemic. And then last year they did a virtual event. Well, E3 2022 has been officially cancelled, and the reason that I think this is prevalent to talk about, it's been not just because of the pandemic. It's been said for a good few years that E3 is on its way out. It's been said since about 2017 or 18. There's no real need for it anymore because obviously E3 has been going for like 20 years. It's been going since the 90s. The way that we get this news and these trailers has changed exponentially since then, obviously with online and social media and all the rest of it. A lot of, especially if they're doing digital online-only streams, theoretically, any studio that wants to can do one of those. If EA have a bunch of games to show, they can put together a wee presentation with somebody talking and then show some trailers. You don't need E3 for that. That has been sort of in the wind for a good few years, and I think the pandemic. When the pandemic took place and they cancelled E3 2020, that was when I was like, right, okay, it's done. It's not coming back. E3 2021, they did bring it back. It was fine, and this year it's not happening. So I don't know. I can see this being the fizzling out of that event, which I don't know. It's sad for nostalgic reasons, but at the same time, we don't need this anymore.
Why is it like this? Is there other gaming festivals like that? Like, or
There is.
they just kind of, do they just go into
So E3 was always.
Comic Cons?
I think though the thinking on that is the worry of that is E3 was the big one. E3 was the main event. So if E3 gets cancelled, what does that mean for Gamescom and all the other events that take place through the year,
Yeah.
PlayStation Experience, and I don't know. I don't know if that's a kind of bad forecast for the smaller shows. But at the same time, I guess the biggest show is going to cost the most to put on, therefore it's the highest risk. So maybe that's why they're cancelling it. Whereas
Yeah.
the smaller events are kind of lower risk. Um,
It just seems weird to me that, like, because, like, if you're going by fucking like Comic Cons, that they have, like, fucking, like, say DC off the dome, and like Marvel, they've kind of blended in with Disney now, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
But I guess our gaming cons completely different.
They have D23, don't they? And shit.
Sorry?
Disney have D23, whatever it's
Yeah.
called. They do the Star Wars and the Marvel shit.
Um,
There's also Star Wars Day as well. They have that thing, don't they, on the 4th of May. But
yeah, it just seems that our gaming cons on a completely different wavelength there, like, or whatever.
Yeah, no. There's lots of other gaming cons, but as I said, the E3 has always been the biggest, so I think that's the main kind of line of thought. That is, if E3 is getting cancelled, then what's next? Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, there's a wee part of me that's sad because it's nostalgia and stuff. And watching E3, I being a right nerd, I always like getting caught up in the hype of it all and like doing me predictions. Like, oh, this game will get shown because I've not talked about this in a few years, and this studio will show something and blah blah blah. That's the part that I'll miss. I enjoy doing all that shit beforehand and then have my dreams crushed afterwards because it's never quite as good as you hope it's going to be. But yeah. It's not happening. But that said, like I said, and seeing the grand scheme of things, it won't really matter. We will get all the same games announced this year that we would have if E3 took place. We'll just get them announced in different ways.
Yeah.
By the studios themselves or by the platform holders, by Xbox and Sony. And
was it something that used to be streamed?
What used to be streamed? Sorry,
E3.
Oh yeah, it was streamed every year. Yeah, it was streamed every year. They used to stream the live show. The same way that the Game Awards get streamed and Gamescom get streamed, all the game shows all get streamed. But 2021 was no crowds. It wasn't filmed in the Expo Centre. It was literally just any game developer standing in front of a screen, being like, "Oh, I'm here to talk to you about this game that we're making," blah blah blah, and then they show you a trailer.
No vibe, yeah. I don't really have. It's funny because when I think about it, I hear E3, I can't really remember what I know it from. I think it just must have been that I must have watched clips of the streams.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that was kind of before YouTube. So
Right.
I guess at a certain point, like, I'm thinking more back when I was like a teenager that it was more of a thing. But I didn't have YouTube then, so I guess you've seen videos online then too. But
back then, that used to be the days where I would buy video game magazines, and you used to get PlayStation magazine and Play magazine and a few other ones.
Yeah,
And they would have, in the run up to E3, they would have articles anticipating what's going to be shown, and then they would cover E3. It's hilarious that they would cover E3 in a magazine because it's like, who gives a shit 2 weeks after it happens? But back in the day, that's just how stuff was covered.
Shit, yeah.
And yeah, and then afterwards it would be like, oh, what was the biggest thing shown at E3? What were the letdowns, the highlights, blah blah blah. So yeah, that was kind of my first memory of E3, and then obviously YouTube, and it kind of became online and started following IGN and stuff, and they would talk about it, and yeah, kind of went for there. But yeah, it's sad because it's a thing for your kind of childhood that's probably going away, but at the same time, it's not something that I feel is necessary in 2022. So that is what it is.
Yeah, I just think it's odd, like this, like say Marvel or / Disney, they're going with their own one. DC are going with their own one, and like there seems to be a market there for them to be able to do that. And I guess it's kind of changed San Diego Comic-Con because that doesn't have as big of things now, but
Yeah.
like they're still really big. So in my head, I can't really see. Well, why wouldn't this be big too? Like
The Comic Con one is interesting because, like E3, I have been hearing whispers over the last few years of that not being as relevant to people because, like you're saying, basically all the streaming sites have their own thing, their own separate announcement schedule and stuff, like Netflix and Amazon and HBO Max and whatever. And then the minute that all of that stuff starts getting pulled away from Comic Con, like Stranger Things is a big kind of part of Comic Con, if that get taken away and put on Netflix or I don't know, other properties that are kind of like nerd culture, if you start pulling all them out, what is left, to show at Comic Con? And it's
well, I think Comic Con is like WonderCon is on now at the moment, and it's a Instagram page I follow, Power of X-Men. They do a podcast too, but it's just a guy basically. But he's pretty involved with the like X-Men community on social media kind of thing, and he's there now, and like just seeing all the stuff like figures, which is any podcast you're likely to see me just fiddling with some figure. I got my new Norman Osborn today, or Green Goblin, but like figures are a huge thing there. I think in America, like. I'd be very surprised to see a day Comic Cons go away because there's the cosplay element to it too. I think the film stuff, like Comic Cons were going long before there was comic book films going on. I don't think they'll ever go away. Might be a bit different, but as a whole industry, people. Sorry, I'm just swallowing a painkiller.
Yeah, it's money being made in merchandise as well. I think that's the big thing that's the staying power for these things. People go to these things to spend money, and folks spend a shit ton of money on figures and limited edition magazines and comics, and
and the creators go there and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of time you get exclusive Comic Con. You can only get this thing at Comic Con or at E3 or whatever. That you can tie in with the exclusivity and stuff. So yeah, I think that does keep these things afloat, and that's at the end of the day, that's what keeps every franchise going, as the merchandise. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting way to look at it in the future. I think I might be totally wrong, and E3 2023 might come back bigger and better than ever. I kind of hope so, but I just don't know if I can see that model of announcing stuff and staying relevant in this day and age, unfortunately.
Yeah, sure, look. It's a very common like Irish thing, right? Sure, look. It'll be grand. I guess I'm just, again, because as I said in previous episodes, I'm not mad into gaming, so like most of the stuff that I'd see when it comes to gaming is just online anyway. So like, and like gaming, I'd definitely be interested in going to see some of the American Comic Cons and such, and even like we've one here in Ireland, or maybe a handful of smaller ones after that. But I've only went to my first Comic Con like 2 or 3 years ago, so it's not something. Especially in E3, I'm like it won't affect how I'll see anything.
Yeah,
like if a trailer for any game comes out, I'll see it online. And
exactly.
It'll be on Facebook, like that kind of thing. Like
that's quite a good actually barometer to look at it. Like folk like me that are kind of pure inside baseball and that shit, it's people like myself that's going to kind of feel that absence, whereas you're more kind of average person in the street that just kind of casually enjoys games. It's not going to make any difference because they're still going to get the same announcements just through different means, so it really doesn't affect anyone in the grand scheme of things. Unless you're kind of someone in the industry or really closely following the industry, it's not going to have any great effect. But I think it's relevant, which is why I brought it up.
Well, goodbye, E3. It was nice knowing you.
So the other thing that happened in the last 2 weeks that we weren't here was Morbius came out. I don't know if you want to...
Like yesterday, was it?
Was it?
Officially on the 1st.
Who gives a shit, really?
April Fool's Day, of course.
I think you've got stuff to say about this, Jerd, because technically he is a Spider-Man character. Therefore,
so
there's a good chance he can
I think on my position of the Spider-Man, it was actually Ben Reilly, but we don't talk about that. The Spider-Man, I'll be the Spider-Man correspondent. Yeah, so like I've said it before, Venom just seems fucking ridiculous without Spider-Man. Well, I guess that's kind of maybe where the story is going, that Morbius seems ridiculous about Spider-Man, and like they just keep giving Jared Leto like leading roles, and like I don't hate Jared Leto, but
I do. I'll say it. I don't give a shit.
Well, look, regardless,
It's
he's not
culty.
as
Come and get
popular
me.
as
I don't care.
studios seem to think he is, and
No.
like certainly not. Like a lot of people don't like him. I
I
wouldn't
hate
say
his
go as far as say I hate him. I think
It's bad as
he
shite.
maybe puts himself out there too much. Like he does really good in dramatic roles.
Mm.
Maybe stick to that. Like I don't see why and like even in the trailer for Morbius, they're like Jared Leto. One of the promo things, Jared Leto was like one of Marvel's biggest legends, and it's like, no, he's not. He's not even that interested in a Spider-Man character, like a villain.
Yeah.
And then like, because I think it was funny in like one of the promos, he said that one of Marvel's biggest legends is like, well, he's not. And he goes, a film has never been made about him before. It was like, well, we can't deny that is true. Like, you have to put something that's wildly inaccurate just to something that you just can't argue against. Like, there's a reason why he was like, and then I guess Morbius has his history in the comics where he's at the time when they couldn't have vampires, but then it was kind of coming back in, so they made him like a living vampire.
Yeah.
It was coming out of science. They could kind of work around the comics code. I think maybe the comics code had laxed at that stage, but you know, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s, he appeared in that, and they gave him hand suckers instead of by drinking blood, because that was to get around censorship. Like, it's like I follow the guy who wrote, like, it's John Semper is the guy who wrote it, and like he says, look, we weren't. It's more of a misconception. We weren't that heavily censored as people think we were. Like, yes, we didn't have real guns, we had laser guns, and he actually he's saying recently, like, we were allowed, if we wanted to, Spider-Man could have punched all the time, but we kind of chose to do it that way. So I was like, fair enough. And I got it on my, I was watching an episode the last day, I recorded it with like one shot of Spider-Man just like decking Scorpion. Like, I was like, nice. But yeah, so Morbius and that had hand suckers instead of drinking blood. This film came out, no one was asking for it. It's just Sony trying to make money from their rights to Spider-Man. Film was supposed to be very bland, got very bad reviews. And then the post-credits, so in the trailer, Michael Keaton, the Vulture from the MCU, Spider-Man, which is still technically a Sony film, but it's in the MCU. He was in the trailer, and also in the trailer there was a poster on a wall, which was actually one of the loading screens images of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man
from the game.
Yep. But then in the actual film, so spoilers for Morbius if you care.
I think it's fair game to spoil Morbius because the director spoiled it, but
on Twitter,
just in case.
Yeah, like if anyone's there watching, we're going to be talking about the post-credit scene now also. But actually, it's funny because no one cares about what happens in the film because it's vampire versus character with woman power versus character with the same powers, and like no one cares. Although I have heard people say Matt Smith was actually quite good in the role.
Who was good?
But then Matt Smith, the doctor. But then apparently he said in some interview, I just went for what was in the script. I didn't know anything about the backstory of the character.
Right.
But so the end credit scene, the purple ripple from No Way Home, the characters who knew Peter Parker came through the multiverse. That crack in the screen's sky somehow brought Vulture into the Sony universe.
Yes.
And we kind of know it's the Sony universe because he mentioned he's Venom. That was also in the trailer. He joked that he was Venom when he was asked who he was, but that apparently is still in the film.
Yeah.
And they have the same Daily Bugle logo that they have in Venom, which I think is the same as the Raimi one. So Michael Keaton appears in this prison, comes across the universe, makes no sense because even though the magic in Spider-Man made no sense, actually re-listening to our Spider-Man episode, and it's like, that story made no sense, but I still fucking loved it because we saw Toby, Tom, and Andrew. But that brought Keaton Vulture into the Sony universe.
Yeah,
they're like, "Who the fuck are you? You shouldn't be in this prison." So they release him. There's one more, and that's one of the post-credit scenes, and then in the next one, he has the Vulture suit.
Yep.
Now, it's supposed to be not the same one as the original because he got that from the fucking Avengers tech, which doesn't exist in the Sony. The Avengers don't exist in the Sony universe because Venom didn't know about. Well, look, we can't really go by logic in any of this because
there's made up as you go.
Yeah, but he just got it, and I think the director, even some of the parts he spoiled on Twitter, was saying, "Oh, he's a resourceful guy." I was like, fucking hell. And so, like, now, Morbius, or like, and then the director also said there is a Spider-Man in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
Vulture said to Morbius, "Oh, you're tired of being a bad guy, the good guy. You want to be a bad guy, and we'll team up against." I think he says Spider-Man, but
Yep.
I haven't seen an exact breakdown. But like, it's not clarified within the film that there is a Spider-Man in that universe. But the director said there is. He says he can't say who it is. And as you were saying before the pod, you think it's probably Andrew?
Well, I just think process of elimination. It's not Tom Holland, because Tom Holland is going to be the MCU Spider-Man. I know that
He's the MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's not going to be Tobey Maguire, because Tobey Maguire's already fought Venom. He already had his own Venom. So if Morbius,
I think he could show up in Doctor Strange, but because he did say,
I think Tobey. I don't think Tobey's done as Spider-Man, but I don't think that's this version. I think
he's going to carry it on. Yeah, I think. And Andrew has said he's more interested in doing it.
I think process elimination. It's Andrew Garfield, because he'll get to fight the alien. You know, he's not fighting the alien, so that's bullshit. Sinister Six with Morbius, Michael Keaton, and Venom. I guess
Morbius, I don't think was ever a member of the Sinister Six.
No,
but
I guess
but it's usually the more classical Spider-Man villains.
I guess they're going to go after Andrew Garfield. And see, that to me is the most offensive part of this whole thing. Like, see if they were just doing their own thing and it didn't affect the good movies, I would be like, do you know what? Knock yourself out, go nuts, make shit films. I don't care. Like, I didn't see two. I'm probably not going to see Morbius. You know, I'll watch the post credits scene online, but I don't give a shit about the actual film. Like, do what you want. It doesn't bother me, but don't mess up what John Watts did such a great job of in No Way Home with Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. You know, the decision to bring him back, the way they brought him back, how good that Garfield was in that movie. The script, his lines were brilliant. He redeemed himself when he caught MJ. You know, you had all these brilliant, triumphant moments that kind of almost made up for the two shit films that he was in, and now you're going to put him in another shit film with Jared Leto.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the part that really pissed me off. The rest of it, I'm just like, I don't give a shit. Like, see if
he's going to get the exact same experience again, and it'll just sour his like he'll have that little bit of come back from No Way Home, and then he'll just fuck. Why did I get into this crap?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's already went, you know, through ridicule and stuff for the first two Amazing Spider-Man films. So the money
bring him back just to slap him in the face,
money better be bloody good, you know, for him to go into this, because
Jesus Christ. I guess they'll just have to go like, look, I'm not going to commit to this until if you sort this shit out. Like, I want to see a script. I want to see like what your actual, because like if I was him now at this stage, like they're trying to get him back in and they're seeing how badly they're doing it, and not only that, they're robbing Sony. Are robbing another Spider-Man villain that was actually originated technically in the MCU. There is my multiple times an episode air quotes, which I never do in real life. It's so weird. But they're taking another villain, and like the worst thing about it is in Homecoming they had Shocker, Vulture, and
the President.
Shocker, Vulture, and Scorpion introduced. So that's like. Not only that you know they're not going to be able to have more than likely not going to bring in another Doc Ock or Green Goblin. I'm not going to hold up one for each one I do. My back. Where's my?
But that's the thing. Like you mentioned earlier about how No Way Home's magic didn't No Way Home's magic didn't really make much sense, but. I don't care if a movie's dumb and doesn't make sense, but me and you were actually kind of talking about this yesterday with Breaking Bad. We kind of break the rules of logic. I don't mind when something breaks the rules of logic as long as those rules that are set within that universe are stuck to. Do you know what I mean? Like Fast and Furious. Obviously, you couldn't really fly through the air and catch your missus while she's flying that way across a highway. Like, it don't make sense. But and land on a car as if it's a mattress, you know. But in Fast and Furious, it's fine. It's like, I don't care, I buy that. I've seen weirder shit happen in this series. You know, it makes no sense, but I'm okay with it, you know, within this universe. Kind of like that with No Way Home. You know, No Way Home, sure, it doesn't make the most sense, but the ends justify the means. And as long as you stick to that rule that they set where the whole point of the spell, the whole, you know, point of bringing these legacy characters into No Way Home was that it brought people from other universes who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man into the MCU. That was the ground rule that was
That's what I
established.
said. Yeah, it was kind of misconstrued by people that it was people who were about to die because that didn't
Yeah.
really match up
Why
for everyone.
that was the trailer's fault. But why would that? So that logic, right? That if you're in another universe, and you know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, then you get brought into this one. How would that send Michael Keaton to the Sony universe? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy
using
Tom Hardy being brought across made very little sense because he's not even interacting with Spider-Man or Peter Parker. But a lot of us kind of let it fly. But this just makes no sense. Like, this is just a step further, but it's like...
And then even, what was it? Because I know I'm trying to put logic on it, but it's just better to tear the shit out of it. But in the end of Venom 2, he sees Peter Parker on the screen in some random shot that's not in any of the... There's no point in that, but like, it's just Spider-Man without a mask, just
in front of the train station,
standing really awkwardly, like that doesn't appear in the film at all.
Clearly B-roll,
Yeah, it's just so... Not even, I think they just shot, like, here, fucking put on the suit there and we'll just put you on this fucking green screen, like, makes no fucking sense. But he licks the screen and goes, that guy.
Yeah.
And I remember having an argument with someone on Twitter going, oh, he clearly doesn't know who he is. And I was like, why would he say that guy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then, like, it's still not really clear. It's like, he doesn't definitively say he knows him or not.
So
then he just goes, that guy.
So that leads on to my next problem with this Michael Keaton situation. The main issue I had with that post-credit scene was Venom / Eddie Brock, whether he knows who Spider-Man is or not, he doesn't really have any incentive to go after him. So why licked the screen and said that guy in a threatening way? I just don't understand. Why, to take that even further...
I guess because the symbiote, because they do have it in the line, it is a hive mind across dimensions. Yeah,
so, right, okay. Yeah, so that you can kind of, explain away that. Why would Michael Keaton, who at the end of Homecoming protected Peter Parker's identity, why would he now want to kill Spider-Man?
And now he's a heel turn, yeah.
That makes no sense, character-wise, in terms of...
Why is Michael Keaton doing it? I don't even understand.
I know. He doesn't need the money, and he's Batman again, so why is he doing this
they're tying him to this shit. And even, like, with the Batman stuff, I'm like, okay, fair enough, you're going back for that, but this is absolute muck, like. Yeah. And I guess he kind of seen a bit of, it could be fooled for seeing a bit of the fanfare going behind No Way Home, and, like, they're getting paid X amount for it, so they're like, fuck. And also then Sony have, like, they're probably willing to just fucking throw the bag at people considering how much money Spider-Man made. But they're not. I'm just realizing I'm out of focus.
You went super bloody.
And then what's actually really annoying from... Oh, there you go. What's really annoying for me too is Venom, at the end of Venom 2, when he changes the universe, it's like everything just kind of... It's really like what I would imagine being on hallucinogenics is like. That everything just kind of wobbles and then things change and he's in a different universe.
Sure.
We don't see the characters enter the MCU in Spider-Man No Way Home. We only see them leave, but they leave in a different way. They all just glow and it's a very kind of generic kind of look.
Yeah.
And then I think Venom disappears in the same way at the end. I can't remember if it's any different.
It does.
But then I guess you could say that we've seen people being dusted, but then in Black Widow, or was it Hawkeye, they showed Yelena's perspective of being dusted from their perspective. So, like, in her view, the wall just kind of crumpled around her and, like, melted and kind of came back. So I guess you can maybe say, oh, this is from their perspective and this is from our perspective or whatever. But, like, the effect changes all the time. And then I'd love to actually just see that, the post-credit scene with Michael Keaton, just to see how he appears. Does he just, like, fly out through the sky? Or and why does he, like, who explains it to him? How does he, like, I guess they kind of, who's like, they go, oh, who are you? And he's just like, okay. How does he know he's from a different universe?
Yeah.
Like, he's no kind of guy to tell him exactly what happened. Like, he's a pretty, and also, he wasn't the guy who made the fucking suit. He had the Tinkerer make it for him.
Yeah.
He was a fucking, he's just a kind of odd job kind of guy. He was a, blue-collar worker, like,
he wasn't as scientific as the Tinkerer was.
Like, he picked up the gun and fucking disintegrated one of the shockers in Homecoming because he didn't know which one it was, like.
Yeah.
And how is he just going to get a suit with that amount of technology out of like, and it's the exact same thing, like, just makes no fucking sense.
No, it makes no sense. I can't sanction it, man. I just can't get my head around it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sit well, and I think it's going to have really negative consequences going forward because, like you're saying, they somewhat set up um, an arc for Michael Keaton's character in Homecoming. Fair enough, I do think to some extent, okay, they've done a lot in those three movies, the Tom Holland movies, but they haven't really capitalised on stuff to set up, like Scorpion coming back, Matt Gargan coming back.
Yeah, Tinker also could have just like
Yeah.
given you're gonna have that Tinker make the Scorpion costume.
Mm.
You could have given Shocker an upgrade.
Mm.
They could then that's three villains. Mysterio could have came back, which apparently was supposed to at one point because there is
Concept art, yeah,
of him fighting Doctor Strange. Yeah, so they've just kind of left that up in the air. I'm assuming that by him not coming back in 2 or in No Way Home that he probably might not come back.
I suppose that said, like, if you brought back... See, that's why I think No Way Home should have just done the 6 of them, like we discussed on the No Way Home episode. Because see now, right, see if Marvel try and do their own Sinister Six, MCU, Tom Holland, right, does his own Sinister Six, and we get, Scorpion, Shocker, all these, people we've seen. The logical step would be for the 6th step to team up and then for Spider-Man to get his ass kicked and then at the last minute Vulture, because he's had a change of heart based on the end of Homecoming. He comes in to protect Spider-Man, and he helps him with kind of fix.
Yeah.
However,
I don't know. I'm in a little bit of a stick.
They already did that in No Way Home with Doc Ock. Do you know what I mean? They already had that.
Like Doc Ock did a lot of heavy lifting in fucking the end of No Way Home.
Yeah, 100%.
There's that bit where Goblin attacks and he saves like Doctor Strange and like maybe the Spider-Man, and he actually defeats Electro.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, like I guess makes it obvious to me is like, why the fuck did he just leg it when Norman went crazy? He didn't try and help anyone there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he just which again, like it's funny because it's from listening to that. Like we all gave it a 10 out of 10, even though we're aware there was issues with it.
Yeah.
But I mean that scene in the apartment, apart from the great fight with Norman and Spider-Man, it was brilliant. But I guess what they could have done is, I definitely mentioned this in the Spider-Man pod. I like the idea that even as unsurmountable as it may seem, of Spider-Man actually being able to beat the Sinister Six by himself. Now, maybe that's having them work off each other, but not to have any help from literally a member of the team.
Yeah.
Even in the Ultimate Spider-Man, when Spider-Man's actually a member of the Sinister Six and Norman Osborn blackmails him into doing shit. I don't like that. I'm like, no. Spider-Man saying he can get his ass kicked by them, and then Spider-Man's whole thing in the comics is he beats unsurmountable odds by believing in himself, and he gets strength out of nowhere. He goes faster than he ever could before. He just fucking does it. That's what. And even in I think it's Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon, he gets them to work against each other. He gets one of Shocker's gloves and he just throws it into Sandman, and Sandman just vibrates and he can't get back out of it. And he's getting them to fucking hit each other with their own moves. That's way more and again, go back to sorry, I was saying this before the pod. Any superhero scene should just be I was saying, I was rewatching the Raimi films, and the last fight with Goblin and Spider-Man is brutal, but just have them knocking their heads off each other. That's how it happens in the comics. And even when we did 2 great fight scenes with Norman and Peter, Tom Holland's Peter in No Way Home. They're the things that people most like the most. And there was apparently supposed to be another scene on the bridge where Peter degliders Goblin, and they're actually supposed to have a little bit of a fight there on the motorway where Goblin first shows up, which just fucking throw that in. People love that. Then you would have had a film where Spider-Man fought Green Goblin 3 times, even if the first one is a little bit of a lesser fight. It's not as complex or whatever. So Morbius shit, I'd imagine. I think what it could have been a lot more interesting to have. They'd kind of set it up in Homecoming, and even Craven, and Sony are burning through all the Spider-Man villains. So who's he going to fight now? An issue I had with the Raimi films to a degree was I would have preferred if they just brought Norman back in the 3rd Spider-Man, because that's what happened in the comics. Norman was dead for years, but then they were just oh, well, actually, the Goblin's formula has a really slow-acting healing factor and it brought him back to life. Just do that. And fucking Osborn's he's in one of the last scenes of Spider-Man 2 anyway as a ghost. So like, just bring him back again. Well, I guess they brought him back. We got that, but yeah, messy shit.
Yeah, well, I think that's the other kind of detrimental thing about this. Is Spider-Man's rogues gallery is obviously very rich and a brilliant place to pull kind of story ideas from. And although he does have a lot of other villains that have never had an on-screen appearance, they could mine. I think this other universe pulling those characters, it just doesn't help things.
No.
That was one of my main issues, both going into No Way Home and after No Way Home. Okay, it was great seeing Willem Dafoe back as Goblin and Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock, but it now means that Tom Holland likely isn't going to fight his own Doc Ock or his own Electro because they've done it already. So that was 5 major, Spider-Man villains now that Tom Holland's not going to get his own original version of, which sucks.
Yeah, and I don't like the way Feige kind of said it. It's like, oh, he was like I guess he'd probably just be fucking. It's whatever. He's just press talk, but he's like, oh, we were never going to get a different Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. I was like, or Doc Ock. I was like, why not? Like,
I know,
fucking do your own thing. Like, it's now like because really at the end of the day, like people like I guess from watching the cartoons, people might go, oh, Venom's Spider-Man's one of his biggest villains. He's not. He was only his villain for a handful of years. And like throughout history, it's been. Well, I'd say Goblin takes it, but it's been neck and neck Goblin and Doc Ock, who are his big bad. And, like, that same kind of thing is, like, if you're having, like, I guess, so the Raimi films ended with Sandman and, Harry kind of coming in as a new fucking snowboard Goblin. And Venom, which technically, Venom, I can see why, like, that the Raimi films took a lot out of the cartoon and, like, Venom was portrayed just as a bad guy there. But you're kind of, like... If you think about it, the only really new guy who's introduced is Sandman. Like, Sandman's a good villain, but, like, he should be, like, a first villain. But I guess that was back in the day when, like Spider-Man kind of rewrote the book for superhero films. So they're like, we might not get another one, so let's throw it all in here. But, perfect world, they would have brought it back. And, like Spider-Man fights the same villains all the time. Like, that's always his thing with Doc Ock and Green Goblin. Like, it's like, fucking you again. Yeah. And, like, it is cool to have interest in people, but... If you're going to give the film a finale, like, it should be against one of his biggest... It should be against his big bad, like.
Yeah. But yeah, long story short, don't see Morbius. The main kind of takeaway that I had when I was reading about the spoilers and I was reading about the post-credit scenes and kind of everybody's reaction to it, I just pictured Kevin Feige sitting with his head in his hands, in his multi-million-dollar mansion at his hardwood desk, or his marble desk, just sitting with his head in his hands, like, Jesus Christ, what have they done? What are they doing to my...
Yeah.
Look how they massacred my boy.
They done so well with No Way Home, like, even with all the fucking stupidness of it, it's still, there's like, to be honest, I'll probably watch it again, but this is fucking... I did actually watch it again last week, I think. But, like, and like, I'm a massive Spider-Man mark, so again, like, as I repeated many times, we got to see Tom, Andrew, and Toby. Very happy with that. Could have been, there's elements of it could have been a lot better, but I still fucking love the fuck out of it. But yeah, so I think that's. But at the same time, they're like the deal that they're working around. That like Sony own the rights to Spider-Man. Like we're probably, we should just count ourselves lucky that we're even able to get anything that's kind of good. That they're not just completely fucking it up. For like, imagine if there's a world, there's an alternate reality where Sony never fucking played ball with Marvel and we just had shite Spider-Man films all the time.
Yeah,
so we still do have shite Spider-Man related films and we probably will have other Spider-Man films, but at least we have a Spider-Man in the MCU.
Yep.
And he's in a good position now to, like, I'd say they're probably going to at least do another trilogy with him.
Yeah. It's the best of bad situation, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
Okay, shall we move on? The other kind of story that I wanted to bring up and talk about was the Welcome to Derry prequel, which is apparently coming. It's apparently coming to HBO Max. Yeah, I first saw this the other night and I was immediately pleased and quite excited for it because I like Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. I like the It movies.
He's coming back for it too?
Well, allegedly.
Yeah, because I didn't I did kind of glance at when you shared the news, the possible news we'd be talking about, but I didn't actually realize
I think,
what
to
it
be
was exactly.
to be frank, I think without Pennywise being in it, it would be dead in the water. I don't think there's much point.
Gotham.
But yes, the first kind of takeaway was, that's cool, and then I was like, well, it's just another franchise being milked for the sake of a streaming site, but maybe it'll be good.
You don't know, yeah. There's certainly breeding ground there. Like, it depends how far
Well,
they're going to go back.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, how do you justify this? Because yeah, okay, obviously it's a big franchise just now, and Stephen King's always a big franchise resource, and HBO Max are also looking for original shows that they can tie into pre-established franchises, which is fine. That's what streaming sites do. However, it actually does make some sense in this context because it has been haunting Derry for centuries at this point.
Back before
Every,
colonization, isn't it?
yeah,
I just by chance I rewatched the two films.
So yeah,
I'd never seen two, so maybe I think I just watched two recently. I had never seen it before, so
two is okay. The first one was definitely better, but two was alright.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen one. There's some stupid shit, but some good stuff. And
yeah, I don't get me wrong. I have I do have my issues with the first movie. I've issues with both of them, but they're good, and Skarsgård is a real kind of highlight of them. I think he's probably the best element of it, and yeah. So I mean, every 27 years, isn't it, that he comes to Derry and he kind of messes up somebody's day. It'll be interesting to see how they tackle that. I wonder if they will do, if each season will be like maybe they'll go 27 years before the events of the first movie and show you what happened there, or maybe they'll go centuries back and show you Victorian.
They have options. I guess that's how they're planning it out. Like, did they want to stretch it out completely, or I just managed to balance my Spider-Man on my laptop really good. So
I guess they could kind of do what Hot the Hill House is doing on Netflix, because they kind of have an anthology thing going where they have a different cast every season, and you could do that here with the only consistent cast member being Bill Skarsgård, and the whole rest of the cast changes every season. But yeah, I guess I definitely see this.
If they want to go, like, they want to be planning it, like, because could be like X-Men Origins Wolverine, they fucking blast through a couple of 100 years in the opening credits.
Yeah.
So like, make a plan, stick to it, because if you go, okay, we're going to do 2 seasons, or no, to be honest, we're probably going to go for 4 seasons. But if we're going to go for 4 seasons, and then it's really popular, and we're like, okay, we kind of used up most of the story out of it. It's like, are we going to bring it back now? Because they can't use the kids. The kids will all be well aged out of it.
Yeah.
Unless you want to bring in some secret thing that they forgot about when they're a bit older, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely think the best course of action would just be doing a kind of period piece, and just because that's the thing, they don't even have to do it in any sort of order. They could go back to the Old West, and then they could jump forward to a totally different era, and then jump back again, and just kind of see where the right process takes them.
I don't know if they gave an actual time date for when he massacred all those Native American, Indigenous people, First Nation people. I'm not sure the exact phrase. I think it is First Nations now.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think they did give a date. I don't remember.
So there's that. Maybe that's before colonization. So maybe there's that massacre. Then 27 years later, it's still with the Indigenous people, and they can do that. And then they can do a Western season. Then they can do, like, they've got the 50s, they can go, they can maybe, like, they do have look, that's a couple of 100 years of 27 years. That's a lot of...
Yeah, a lot of seasons, a lot of content.
Nearly 5 appearances of it per year that's available. No, per
century.
Per century. Okay, so they've got potentially, it's less than 5, so not... It's never too good at maths. They've got potentially, that's if they want to base a season on its appearance. But, like, how long, I don't know, is it clearly stated how long he's around when he appears? Is it a couple of weeks, or?
I don't know how long he's around. I guess, well, I mean, in the movies, he's around until they defeat him.
At least a couple of days, but when does he go, right, I've had enough? Is it that he eats people and he hibernates then?
Yeah. He comes out.
Or he just kills people.
No, he eats them. He eats children.
Oh, yeah.
It's
That poor
very,
fucking kid in the skateboard in the second one. Like,
yeah.
I felt like
That's messed up. Yeah,
I don't think fucking really Patrick's no.
James McAvoy.
James McAvoy could have done anything there, but I was like, we just killed that kid. He's like, you don't want to report that or something.
Yeah,
You're literally the last person seen with him. Like, maybe like tell someone about it. Like, I don't know.
but yeah, no, it sounds exciting, and like I said, there is a reason for them to do a prequel. I guess it doesn't seem like just a total kind of corporate cash grab reason. It sounds like there could be some actual creative story ideas there.
Yeah.
Also, in other Bill Skarsgård news, they are talking of Hollywood cash grabs. They are rebooting The Crow, which
Yes.
the film starring Brandon Lee. That they made. Tragically, Brandon Lee died while he was making that film. So they are doing a remake, and Bill Skarsgård is apparently going to be playing the title character, playing the Crow. I don't know that much about the Crow in depth. I do have I can't see it right now, but I do
comic, is it?
Comic somewhere.
I must watch the film. Apparently, I don't know how was the original film received.
It's good. It's a kind of hold on.
It's aged.
Oh Jesus! I thought my ship was going to fall down.
Dark Horse, is it?
Yes. No. Well, yeah, it's Dark Horse, but I think this printing's Titan. But this is a reprint because it says it talked back in print at last. But yeah, it is.
Never went near the comics at all.
It's a super, obviously, gothic book, and the film's the same. I mean, the film is very. It does have an air of cheese to it because of the era it was made in. But it does have some cool ideas, although they might be a bit tropey at this point.
Been done by other things.
We've seen, how many characters have you seen undead characters looking for justice? And that's been done so much at this point. But you know what? It's a franchise, and Hollywood aren't going to, go without rebooting a franchise. There's also a sequel to The Crow, which I only kind of discovered fairly recently, and I bought that, but I've not read that yet.
Comic. There was another film, wasn't there?
Yeah, they made like 3 films, I think.
Cheaper, like a straight to DVD kind of.
Yeah, I never saw any of them.
I feel like I know the person who was recast as him, but I can't remember.
That first movie, I kind of just banned it in with a lot of those kind of older comic book films like Spawn and I guess
Barbed Wire, Tank Girl.
Yeah, like that kind of era pre kind of 2000s. But yeah, it was a cool film. It was very cheesy. Cheesy soundtrack and a lot of cheesy dialogue. But
you know what's funny? I was actually just listening to, and now I nearly mentioned him as much as I didn't mention some of the movies of the Weekly Planet, but Sal from Comic Pop, where his Elseworlds Exchange. So I've been kind of going back through the back catalogue of that, where he does be on with Cape Joel.
Right.
And they were talking about Crow, and they were saying that like maybe because they were slightly older than us, they were like, "Oh, that's a fucking killer soundtrack." So like maybe that's just like it's like difference in our ages.
It suits
I don't know if Sal's that much older than me or Joel.
It suits the movie, and it is kind of iconic and a fairly cheesy.
Who's in it? Give me some names.
Who's in the film?
The soundtrack.
Oh, Christ, I don't know. I think there actually might be a band that kind of did the whole soundtrack, like Queen used to do that a lot. Although I'm not sure who it was.
The Crow soundtrack.
That wasn't Evanescence, but I feel like it was probably Evanescence.
No, way before then.
It was probably the whatever
the Cure. Stone Temple Pilots. I know that
Cure
name.
makes sense.
Rage Against the Machine. You're gonna regret saying what you said.
Oh, the Cure on it.
Violent Femmes, Roland's Band, Pantera, Jesus and the Mary Chain.
Fair dude, that's a buying lineup.
I don't recognize 9 Inch Nails. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eat shit, Dan.
Yeah, what a soundtrack. I take back everything.
Maybe some of the more popular ones stuck in your brain that are.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like from the trailer or something there was a really cheesy song used, but not the. I mean, the Cure and 9 Inch Nails and Pantera and stuff. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but Bill Skarsgård playing the character, I think that is fairly interesting because. So when they were doing when Matt Reeves' Batman was announced, and before the Barry Keoghan thing got confirmed / even suggested, I was thinking, because this is what I do in my spare time, I was sitting thinking about, who would be a good Joker, because there was the Willem Dafoe rumours for a while, because they made The Lighthouse together, and Bill Skarsgård did cross my mind. I was like, that would be a really interesting take to see, because Skarsgård,
is it a bit too similar to fucking...
Right,
that's a bit too obvious compared to...
That's exactly where I'm going with this, because I was like, at first I was like, Skarsgård's a good kind of similar age to Pattinson and blah blah blah, let's see them kind of chemistry on screen, and I thought, no, he won't do it because he's just done Pennywise, it's too similar. But then he does The Crow, because The Crow, I mean, look at him, is that not a clown?
Yeah, well, look, Barry Keoghan is fucking...
do you know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sorry for anyone listening, because so many podcasters don't get it right. Keoghan is... But he himself says that he's probably pronouncing it wrong, but he puts the G in.
Yeah, he says the G.
So he says the G, so it's Keoghan, I guess. Like, I don't know, then it means it... Like, my name is Gerard, but everyone in Ireland, that's why the guys refer to me as Jerd, Jerd, but my name should be Gerard, or like, I don't know how UK people pronounce it.
I guess in Scotland it's usually Gerard. People would say like Gerard.
Gerard. Yeah, or Gerard. Well, it's the whole thing. But Irish people always say Jerd. And like, I know some Irish people will fight back, and I don't know, I say, but fuck you, it's my name. That's what I hear most of the time. It's usually Jerd. That's how we say it in my family. It's funny, some of my siblings still can't spell my name to this day. Like Barry Keoghan, I guess, because he's really just throwing a spanner in the works there, because I know he's even admitted that he's probably pronouncing it wrong, and I know that usually in Irish the G is silent when there's a GH, so
but you know something?
He's just fucked it for everyone.
But it's also self-promotion, because now everybody's talking about it, so everybody's saying the same.
I think there's a meme of like this Joe.ie, which is like an Irish media company. One of the interviewers from that asking him, how do you pronounce it? And he's like, I'll never tell. So like it's just going to be that I think no one's ever going to be able to say his name correctly. But he's even an obvious choice for Joker, to be fair. Yeah. He's kind of like fan casting Joker, which is that kind of weird thing of like, fan casting. Like generally that if something is what a lot of people would naturally think would be a good choice, they wouldn't go that way, or they try and go that way and they can't get around. Like fucking
Heath Ledger.
What's his face? Well, he wasn't fan casting. He wasn't fucking...
No, but I'm saying the opposite. Nobody wanted Heath Ledger. And then...
I get you, yeah. The castings... Usually when you hear casting in a film, it's like, why the fuck would you cast him? And then it works out or it doesn't. And who's the Office guy? Everyone wants him for Reed Richards.
Krasinski,
I think that probably just won't happen now, because he's too obvious of a choice and too many people have said it.
Yeah, I mean...
but yeah, I think like... Skarsgård has a similar vibe to Barry Keoghan, that they're odd looking, and not to say that like I'm fucking, people call me odd looking or whatever, but I'm not as unique looking as they are. They have a very particular unique vibe about them,
which helps when you're playing a character like the Joker or Pennywise
or any character. They're interesting to watch, like not only just based on their acting ability, but they have something that other people don't have. They have a very particular look, and
you can sell that.
Blind Boy from the Rubber Bandits, an Irish guy, I think he said about Barry Keoghan, was like, he looks like he smells of vinegar, or he looks like vinegar smells, or something. Which I don't know if that's really much of a compliment, but he's a whole vibe about him, just down to his face or whatever. Like it's
listen, I'm looking forward to the Crow film. I'll see it, and Bill Skarsgård does, because I enjoy him. The one concern I've got about it, the rumoured director is Rupert Sanders. Rupert Sanders directed Snow White and the Huntsman and the Ghost in the Shell movie with Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
So
see, that's the weird thing to do when you get weird casting, but then you get weird directors. Like isn't it the fucking Kong guy? Which I'm from what I hear, Kong is perfectly all right, but he's the guy who's supposed to be tipped to direct Metal Gear Solid, or he is directing Metal Gear Solid.
Yes, directing Metal Gear Solid.
So like, that's another weird one where they just put a director on something. You're like, why the fuck are they directing it? Like,
that's
somebody don't even have a good enough track, or their only track record is mediocre, and you're like,
I need to tell you something actually off air about that Metal Gear movie, but we'll get there. I don't want to say it in there yet. So yeah, I don't know, just not a great pedigree. Like Ghost in the Shell. I mean, Snow White, and Ghost in the Shell. I guess strictly speaking, were both adaptations of a book, of source material.
Yeah.
That weren't great. So this
Well,
doesn't bode too well for the
I
Crow.
think I saw the first Snow White, and like at least I remember kind of enjoying it, and it was a
Snow,
different type of adaptation. It
Snow
wasn't
White
like
the
a
Huntsman, really? Was it? That was one with. Was that not the one with Jeremy Renner?
no. That was
That was Hansel and Gretel. That was
something like
Hansel
that.
and
Yeah,
Gretel.
yeah.
So it
No, Snow White and
was.
the Huntsman was kind of like more
Right,
of
hold
a.
on.
It was a take on it. It was like
Was
Chris
that the one
Hemsworth's.
with Kristen Stewart? The Snow White.
I don't know.
I think it
Maybe, and then like
was.
Jessica Chastain is in the second one,
Yes,
and
Kristen Stewart and
who's the
Charlie
witch?
Theron was
Yeah,
the witch.
I thought
Yeah,
it was
okay.
all right. Like it
Right,
wasn't.
okay.
I don't think it was really offensively bad or anything. I remember kind of enjoying it. I think it was just kind of weird because Kirsten Stewart was Snow White and she wasn't in the second film. But
Listen,
then it was Jessica Chastain, which I am always
for
happy to see Jessica Chastain.
in the interest, yeah, she's great. In the interest of full transparency, I have not seen the Snow White movie or Ghost
Ah,
in the Shell in their entirety.
shite
However,
talker.
I've
Well,
seen I've seen portions of both, and I've seen enough to know that both look pretty.
well, the vibe from Ghost in the Shell wasn't giving off anything good, and especially I think there was
Um,
all that stink because it'd been accused of whitewashing, even though
listen,
it's a robot, and a lot of like Asian people are like, "What's wrong with?" Like people were complaining about it. A lot of Asian people were like, "What's wrong with Castle?" Like
yeah,
Scarlett Johansson's cool. She's really popular over there, I believe.
and the memes that came from it were also great. That Scarlett Johansson was then just playing every character, like
Playing a tree,
even
yeah,
player
yeah,
tree
yeah.
and shit. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think that's
um,
the kind of like from what I'm. Well, look, this is very select vox pops of people. The Japanese, I'm assuming, Ghost in the Shell comes from.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's a manga and an anime, I believe.
yeah. So like people coming from there, going like, yeah, we like Scarlett Johansson, like,
Yeah.
and like it's also a fucking robot. Like it's not. Is the was the, also you haven't seen it? I was thinking was it actually an Asian actress at the start of it playing the original character whose I guess brain goes into the robot body, or is that how that's done?
I seen the intro. I think I watched maybe the first hour. I don't know if it lasted that long, and then I did something else. Like I kind of actively decided that I had like chores to do, like rubbish to take out or something.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not going to watch the rest of this because I've got
But
shit.
so when the Huntsman is like, well, it's
That was
49%
funny.
Rotten Tomatoes, and whatever common sense is 3 out of 5, and IMDb, which I don't hold any weight with,
No.
is 66.1 out of 10. Usually, if to be honest, and I noticed that over the years, if IMDb gives something about 6 out of 10, I usually really like it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe I just
Agreed.
like that film. And Joe, I think that film was just like it felt like Chris Hemsworth playing like if you've ever read those comics, I think it was from some Avengers run where Thor, it was like the first time they kind of started bleeding. Well, no, it happened before, but it just showed a young Thor fighting Apocalypse. And he's like, Thor is like just drinking and shit. It felt like that.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what it felt like. It just
Yeah.
felt like watching the early adventures of a even more foolhardy Thor.
Yeah, but I guess we didn't really see that much of that version of Thor in the MCU, so maybe it would be quite good to see that. But anyway, yeah, listen, I might be totally wrong. Like, look at David Fincher's first movie was Alien 3. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking at David Fincher now.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really go.
Oh, we know what you think of Dave Fincher now.
Okay,
I feel like going a little bit like Kevin Smith, Fat Man Beyond podcast, and just like miming a blowjob or something. Dave Fincher. I had to throw it in. I'm a big Fat Man Beyond fan.
But yeah, like I said, anything could come of this.
Yeah, I guess look, we've been proven wrong before.
Yeah, I hope
But
I'm wrong. I hope that everything that gets released is decent. I never want something to be shit. Although it is fun to rail on stuff like Morbius.
But usually for directors, you're like, to be honest with you, I'm just flipping on exactly what I said there. Like when the Hangover guy was directing a Joker film, I'm like, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it at all. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe sometimes you just don't want to.
Is there any more news you would like to discuss, Jerd, or shall we move on?
As per usual, I've nothing apart from the news you bring me. I generally, because I spend so much fucking time on social media, that I probably have seen something that was interesting, but I can't think of anything. No, I don't think of anything.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so that being the case, since we've been away for 2 weeks, what have you been watching, playing, um, reading in the last fortnight?
Well, to give it its due, I put this at the top. But Moon Knight. I watched the first episode of Moon Knight.
Yep, I did too.
Um, I'd mentioned in a previous pod that I read the 6 issues of the Declan Shalvey and Warren Ellis run. I know Jeff Lemire has a run, but I could not be arsed reading anymore. I'll probably just watch. And maybe if I really like the show, I'll go back and read that. Overall, I thought it was quite. I was left a little bit wanton by the end of it. Now I know
Really?
different people have different views on it because Moon Knight isn't the type of character that everybody knows.
Mm,
And like literally, I know very little. I just follow a Moon Knight core meme page,
right.
and there's that meme of which doesn't exist in a real comic, but it's like Moon
Random
Knight
bullshit.
walking in, going that one. But the one I really like is where's my Dracula, you big fucking nerd? Where's my money?
Yeah.
Someone was talking about it, like the director had tried to work it in, but he's like, we can't
Right.
drop an F bomb,
Uh,
and we just couldn't find a way to work it in. But
right.
just kind of jump ahead a little bit. Mark Spector, no, Stephen Grant,
Uh-huh.
who in the comics is usually like that's the Bruce Wayne type character, and along with Moon Knight having teamed weapons and a cape and a moon jet and a moonerangs, that's why he normally gets compared to Batman because, or we call him Marvel's Batman because those two characters. So, but in Steve Grant in the show is, and this is full spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, Steve Grant in the show is like a mild-mannered English guy who works in some museum, but his only, just to jump ahead, his only friend is seemingly like a street performer who's a statue, isn't really his friend. He just goes up and talks to this guy while he's
And
being
then
a
pays him
statue in
for it.
public.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but I was thinking if they'd have worked it in where it was sometime around Halloween and there was another street performer there who was like a Dracula who bullied Stephen Grant and took money off him or mugged him, or he tried to give him a little bit of money, then he ended up taking a load of money or whatever, and like he hit him a box or something. But then he goes back as Mark and he goes, Dracula, you big fucking nerd, give me my money. Where's my money? So I was like, that'll work there. That's jumping ahead. I felt it was a little bit, I would have liked a little bit more Moon Knight. I thought WandaVision was a very slow first 2 episodes, but I felt like they're maybe just trying to lead people in a bit too much, and it's like you could have given us a bit more Moon Knight from the get go. Maybe not from the get go, but I think a couple of seconds of it at the end of the episode. That's it.
I think, though, I think it is an appropriate first episode. Like, first episode kind of traditional structure is you introduce the character, you introduce the conflict, and then at the end you give us the reveal of the full Moon Knight costume, which is exactly how it went. But no, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Oscar Isaac in that kind of bumbling role, doing that bad English accent, very Dick Van Dyke.
Well, some like I've heard the exact opposite by English people saying that's a perfect accent. So,
No, really?
but I've seen both sides of that.
Don't get me wrong, I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed it. I thought it kind of worked, and it's always interesting to see. I think Oscar Isaac is a really fascinating actor because he's very unpredictable in his roles, which is something that I think's kind of few and far between in Hollywood nowadays. A lot of people just play themselves, like The Rock. Or just there's so many actors out there that just Keanu. As much as I love Keanu, he just plays Keanu. That's fine. But Oscar Isaac is really a chameleon. He really disappears in a role, and he can be whatever you need, whatever the script needs him to be. He can become that. And I agree that I think that's why when he was cast as Moon Knight, I thought that's perfect because here's a guy that has to play tons of different roles, consistently in a single season, and who better than Oscar Isaac to pull that off? I mean, when you think of Oscar Isaac in Dune, for example, as opposed to the way he is in Ex Machina, where he's this kind of weird pet creep, with serious kind of underlying issues, and then you watch Star Wars, and although those new films aren't great, he plays this cocky, pilot that's kind of all systems go and kind of acts before he thinks, and he's very irrational. And again, you buy that kind of hotshot pilot that he plays, and then he can go and do something else that's totally reserved, a bit creepy sometimes, a bit, or endearing and goofy, like this character, like Stephen Grant. So yeah, I think he really carried this episode, and I think he's going to carry the season going forward because, like I'm saying, every week he's going to have the opportunity to bring something different to the table, and I think he is very good at doing that. But yeah, just in terms of this episode, I thought it was fair enough. I thought the introduction of the character was fine. I think it gave away enough without giving away too much. There is still an element because, like you, I'm not that familiar with the character. I know that I know that he gets his powers from an Egyptian god. He used to be a mercenary before that, and he has a split personality disorder, and he's very like Batman, but a bit more like Deadpool because he's a bit sarky and stuff. That's kind of everything I know about the character. So really,
well, I'm not sure if the snarkiness of him. I don't know if that actually him. Like, I don't know if he is. And that's maybe. That could be more just the memes misguiding you if you haven't read much.
I was going to say, I think that kind of depends on the writer, because I don't think that's how he started. I don't think because he didn't start with split personality disorder either. I think he was just very much a mercenary that got powers, and then they brought in the multiple personality disorder, and then I think certain writers took it a bit more comedic at certain points. Like I said, I don't really know that much in depth about the character, but that's my kind of bottleneck description of him. What I know going in. So I was actually quite exciting because being very on the inside of this shit, and knowing a lot of stuff before it's going to happen, like Spider-Man, and shit. It's nice to be surprised. It's nice to be able to go into something with no clue what to expect and just process it as it happens.
They can guide you a bit too. Like, I didn't really, because I like Avengers prior to Bendis. The new Avengers run when Bendis took it over and Wolverine and Spider-Man joined the team. I didn't really know much about. I read bits of Avengers here and there, but like I've said many times, my brother bought the comics. He did buy Avengers, but I was far more familiar with Spider-Man and X-Men and Wolverine and I wouldn't even say Fantastic Four really, but I have a lot of blind spots, especially from like classic Avengers stuff. Like I'm more aware of classic, but I'm not even still blind spots of the earlier stuff, but. When WandaVision came out, like, I think maybe a little bit beforehand, I'd read the first volume of the Vision book by Tom King. And, but like, I hadn't really read. And then, like, when it came out, I was like, okay, I'll read. There's a couple of Marvel Unlimited, and I read a couple of, like, Wanda and Vision miniseries. And I found that really interesting to see, oh, look, this is where they got that from, and this is where they got that from. And like, it's very interesting to see after the fact of like, is in comparison to all the other Avengers or Marvel stuff, having an idea of where they get those story elements from. But they really like to go back. So watch a bit of WandaVision, then go read some of the older stories and see, oh fuck, they really took like bits out of here, bits out of there, bits out of there. It's interesting to kind of mine it afterwards. And like maybe I probably will go back and read because I guess I'd have to look into it and see after that Ellis and Shelby run, like how well is that received after the fact? Because I think it only goes on for another. So they did 6 issues, and I think that run only goes on to issue 17, so it's not that much to read. And then like the Jeff Lemire one is supposed to be good too, but I don't think it's supposed to be as good as that Warren Ellis and Declan Shelby 6 issues.
Right.
So I do, I have a lot of comics to read all the time, so like I have a big massive plan for my next God knows how many years of reading comics. Like I want to read this, I want to read this, I want to read that. So I may or may not follow up on it. I guess it depends how much I like the show. I might just try it and see how I feel with it if it's encouraging me to read more. So Ethan Hawke is in it. Fucking love Ethan Hawke.
Me too.
One of my favorite people ever. I nearly met him a couple of years ago, but I didn't call in sick to work. I had just made I used to do a bit of filmmaking, and I just made a short film kind of in homage to the Before Sunset films, like at a filmmaking festival thing that I used to go to in like Hamburg. And it was like 2 weeks later, he was coming to a cinema in Dublin. And I was like, I don't know why, but like I brought him the script, and I did the script, and I'd like just written a little letter on the back of it, and I was asking about it on Twitter and stuff, and like people who were organised were like, "Oh, did you see him?" and stuff. But he was coming to do a talk after a film, but he was only getting there after the film finished.
Right.
So he was coming straight from the airport, and like I already fucking like an idiot already said it in work that I was going to go and try and go to it. Like if I just kept my mouth shut, I could have called in sick,
Sure.
and I would have been able to go to it, or I would have been able to meet him. I could even see the blacked out Mercedes that was going to pick him up after the screening outside afterwards, and I just never got to fucking meet him, and I was sickened. But yeah, so I only missed him like an hour or two. But yeah, I fucking love him. I just think he's amazing. I'm a big fan of the Before Sunset films. I listened to him on Mark Maron mainly. I'm sure I'll probably listen to him speak other places. I just think he's a legend.
Trading, it's incredible. He's
yeah, he's a great guy. Really, it's like his thoughts on everything. Like his creative process, how he's aware how fucking pretentious he can be at times, and you know, I think he's just a good skin. Like
I've always kind of thought of him as being like pretentiously down to earth. Do you know what I mean? Because yeah, sure, he can be a bit. Make some kind of weird decisions in movies and stuff, but then when you hear him speaking about it, you realise that he's just still a normal guy. You know, okay, he's a
millionaire. He's a pretentious, he's he had definitely. If you look up fucking Ethan Hawke pretentious, you'll find a very charming
he's a creative, you know,
clip on YouTube of him talking about it. Like
he's a creative guy, and obviously he's a celebrity and whatever, but he still has a. What's the word? He's still very self-aware. I think, you know, he's not disappeared up his own arse as yet.
Yeah.
He still seems very self-aware of what he is, you know, and how he's perceived. Which
I think he probably has, but like he's reflected on that, and he's present and comfortable with the fact that he may have in the past. But just listen to him talk. Like he does everything. He does writing. He does music. He maybe doesn't play music in a professional sense, maybe he's only a hobbyist, but like he does so much of his art, and like he's a fucking legend. And like even to hear him talking also, because he's also talked about Oscar Isaac's performance and how he's approached the characters and the different characters. Like I think this happens every time something Marvel comes out. They're like, oh, it's completely different and blah blah blah, and then you look back and like, it wasn't really. But you know, it's hard to say that it isn't. Like it's always like, because they get good actors. Like he didn't have much of a character, but so far we haven't seen much of him. But like he kind of seems like a kind of a nice guy. His character is like, it's a very small character apparently from the comics, and then they've just maybe added something that a different character does, or they added something new that a different character does.
I think he's somewhat of an amalgamation of characters, this Harrow guy that he's playing, because in the comics I think he's in like 1 or 2 issues and then he dies. But he also is very kind of David Koresh, cult leader. Jared Leto, Christ. He's David Koresh. He was the Waco guy. Remember Waco?
No,
it was an American. It was a cult in America, and it was like kind of like a ranch or something. It was a big house anyway that they all stayed in. And David Koresh was the leader of the cult, and had like 30 wives or something.
Oh, right. Is that kind of like that'd be a little bit of the basis for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
That's Manson. That's Charles Manson. But
so did Manson have a ranch too?
Waco was later. Waco was like the 90s or the 80s.
Right. I know that I've heard the expression.
But it was a horrific tragedy, because he had all these wives, and he had loads of different kids with these wives, and some of them were apparently underage. And in the end, I don't know if it was the FBI, ended up in a siege with the Waco compound. They were like outside, and the whole thing went on fire. And he basically locked everyone in, and they all burned to death.
Oh, okay.
So I was thinking, really tragic.
What was the one with the wine cooler? Don't drink the wine cooler. Is that's linked to another mass suicide or something? Is it?
Not sure.
No.
But they made a TV show a few years ago, which I felt was really underrated. You had, what's his name? Zod, brilliant actor. Michael
Shannon.
Michael Shannon. He was the FBI guy.
Sin against God, Zod is the first thing you think of there.
He was the FBI guy, and Taylor Kitsch played David Koresh. And he was the cult leader on the compound, and Michael Shannon was the one trying to negotiate and get them to come out. And Shea Wiggum was also in it, who's another great actor. I think it was like a 5-part miniseries, so I would recommend that if you get a chance. That's what was really underrated at the time, I felt. But yes, that vibe is definitely present here in Ethan Hawke's performance, which is interesting. Always like when, you know, these kind of fantasy, sci-fi, you know, superhero archetypes are based on real life characters. I always think that's really interesting.
It brings stuff in, yeah.
but yeah, and I really enjoyed the first episode. It excited me for the rest of the season, which is all it really had to do. I thought the suit looked pretty cool, and movement and motion.
Yeah.
And
I kind of just felt like there was a certain element of it where he's the befuddled character guy, but like it felt a little bit. I don't know. It's in like I literally just watched it last night, but Spider-Man 2, where it's like the nice kind of quiet guy who's getting shit on all the time, and the fucking woman he works with is horrible.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like so
she's
mean
the
to him.
worst. Yeah,
But as I think to mention him again, Sal from Comic Pop was kind of saying on their, which is a very good YouTube series, not to take away our own audience, but absolutely Marvel and DC, where they talk about this stuff, and they were saying how it's like, do we really want to watch this Stephen Grant as being our point of view character for the whole point? We don't know, I guess, how it's going to go ahead. Are we going to focus on the other characters more, the other personalities? Yeah, I guess I think personally, if it was, but then again, like this, going by the comics, so Mark Spector is the main guy, and he creates these other characters after he's killed. And that whole thing about him ringing his mother, I don't believe there's anyone on the end of that phone.
yeah.
Someone mentioned the postcards that he apparently gets from his mother are the same ones from the gift shop he works in.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would personally hope that this Stephen Grant character isn't kind of takes a bit of a backseat at some point.
I really enjoy the fact that we don't know. I think the opportunity for like more twists and turns in the story, I think, is a good thing. I also really appreciate the fact that I don't know how much this has been sort of acknowledged. This is the first original Disney Plus show based on a character that we haven't seen before. You had WandaVision, Captain America. We've seen all them for the films. Hawkeye. This is the first introduction of a character on Disney Plus. So I think that is quite a significant and interesting thing. I think that's what sort of excites me about this show more than any of the past 4 that we've had, or 5 if you include What If.
Arguably not if you include Daredevil.
But Daredevil was a Netflix show.
Yeah, it was. That's what the Marvel TV shows were when they came out.
Until that gets a new season, then it's a Netflix show.
He's been in a film.
Which, as of the release of Moon Knight, I'd still argue that Moon Knight.
I kind of get what you mean, but yeah. I'm being fucking pedantic, but like. So are you.
No. Yeah, I think that's exciting, and I actually like the fact that we don't know. I like the fact that I'm not a Moon Knight geek.
You're not Moon Knight?
I don't know everything about the character. I don't know where they're going to go with this. And like you're saying, whether Stephen Grant will be the main sort of protagonist or whether they'll switch to a different. I think that's exciting. I think give us twists. Give us, like, if you go into Fight Club knowing the twist, it's not as fun. Whereas if you go in totally blind and then twist it at the end, I mean, I know that's hard 20 years later, but the point is, not knowing is the kind of most fun part of this series, I think. And
he's a new character, but at the same time, he's also like not a character that has appeared in much, so people don't know the crack with him.
I think that's the thing. I think also with characters like this, like you're saying, don't really have much representation outside of the comics. It's hard to picture them interacting with the wider universe and the Avengers. Like, I'm not saying Moon Knight's going to become an Avenger, but just the idea of him meeting Bucky Barnes or another character that's pre-established, it's like, how would that go? And again, I think that's an exciting element that introducing new weird characters like this brings to.
And it's not only that he's not known, but then he's also a complicated type of character that it takes a bit of explaining. Like, a lot of people go, "Oh, he's Batman." Like, I don't think the one thing I think that this episode did is nobody is going to say from watching this first episode. I guess you probably still will get people saying it, but there's not a whole lot to say that people would go, "Oh, he's Marvel's Batman." I was like, well, how?
That I agree, right? But that said, I also wonder if that's why you were saying that maybe we didn't get to see. I don't know if you were implicating that maybe a bit more action would have been good, or a bit more Moon Knight stuff would have been.
Not so much that, but I don't think people would like look at this first episode and think, this is just like Batman.
That's what I was going to say. Like,
not because of an action point, just because of how they introduced it. Like, he's not. We don't see just.
I wonder
a billionaire type and a Caped Crusader type, but they've also made him like I know at different points. Sometimes Khonshu is real, sometimes he isn't. Sometimes like different interpretations of the character. Sometimes he does actually have superpowers.
I wonder if that restraint though of not showing the boomerangs and not showing him gliding about his cape. I wonder if they chose not to do that in the first episode to avoid the Batman comparison.
Like, well, they did it in the trailers more so. Like,
I've done it in the trailers, but I mean, I think just in terms of the discourse that following the premiere, I wonder if they sort of refrained from doing that because Robert Pattinson's Batman's just out, and you know, they all know the schedule when they're making this shit.
Well, I guess think of it in that way. They did do a good job of like no one's going to be saying from the first episode no one's going to be going he's just like Batman because they haven't given us anything. They've kind of, and even so they've given us Stephen Grant, who again in the comics is the billionaire type, but they've given him either he's more this mild mannered guy. Maybe he becomes something like that at the end of the like. See, he could change his opinion, like because I think from what I understand, money he earned as a mercenary, he trades a stock or he plays the stock market with it, and that's how he becomes the millionaire character. Right. And the millionaire character isn't also he's marked respect to the mercenary first, and then the billionaire character is one of his creations that comes in later in his career.
Yeah.
But in regards to the boomerang, his Marvel Legends figures were the images of them were released, and they look like I probably wouldn't get them. I'm not big on MCU figures, even though I did just get this Spider-Man in the hopes that they re-release Toby and Andrew, so I can have the three of them. But it's one of those figures that could totally work as a. You could use it as your if you're one of those collectors who wants I don't want to get MCU, I only want comic book versions. This costume is done so well, and the Marvel Legends figure is done so well. It could you could go well. Listen, you could use it as a non-MCU character, but that character only comes with, and it's a very big thing with like accessories for characters. So big thing that's always wanted with a Spider-Man is that he has these wall crawling hands, which this character only has a web whip and a wall crawling, and the previous version had all three. But the ideal is to have fist, wall crawling, and web crawling. This Moon Knight has two fisted hands, and he has two hands for holding a one Moonerang thing. So I'm assuming it's going to become more of a thing for him. Now, maybe it looks a bit bigger from the figure, at least. It looks a bit bigger, so maybe he doesn't use it exactly like Batman uses the Batarang. But in the new Batman film, Batman doesn't really use, it's a knife. That's more of a knife. But as I argued, that is essentially, it's a Batarang.
Prototype Batarang.
He doesn't throw it as a Batarang because a rang comes from kangaroo. No.
Boomerang?
That's the thing? Boomerang. Yeah, sorry. Kangaroo.
Australian shit.
Kangaroos are dangerous. They're vicious.
But one thing I also found interesting about this first episode, I mentioned earlier about it being, from what I know about Moon Knight, is he's a somewhat comedic character. One of the big things I felt like was missing from the Deadpool movies, as much as I enjoyed Ryan Reynolds' take on that character, the fact that they took away his inside voice, the fact that they took away that, because in the comics you'd have Deadpool speaking out loud, being Deadpool, and then in his head there would be like a reasonable voice who would be like, what you doing? Stop it, this is ridiculous. And then the other voice would be crazy, and it would be like kind of like the Joker, like, no, just do what you want, like, who cares, kill them all, like, and he had this internal battle going on, from like schizophrenia or whatever, and he was arguing with the two voices. And I always kind of read the meaning voice in like a kind of Patrick Stewart posh accent, like, don't do that, Deadpool. And then the other voice would just kind of sound like the Joker, kind of like.
Was there a particular arc where they were like, it was over a long period of time, there was another voice who just came in occasionally, and then ended up being like a villain?
I'm sure there was, but I've not read it. But but the fact that was absent for the Deadpool movies disappointed me a wee bit. But it's something that's in Moon Knight.
It's funny that was
done in this. With F. Murray Abraham who's great. He's doing.
I didn't recognize the name when people were saying it because I was watching other reviews of it. I was like, who? And I know him. He is great. He's great. He was in an episode of Louis show, just playing like his uncle or something. Louis C.K. That's what
I
we
think
mentioned him before, but he's like Mexican. But this guy he played as like rich Mexican uncle, and he just I think that was my first introduction to him.
one of my favourite things I've seen him in was the Grand Budapest Hotel. He plays the older version of the bellboy, Tony Rivoli's character, which is Holocaust Interview. He's really good in that. But yeah, so he's Conchu, I think, the god, but that's a voice that Stephen Grant's hearing in his head. And I really enjoyed his disdain for Stephen Grant. He's like, oh, I date spat.
Not you.
I really appreciated that. And yeah, that gave me super Deadpool comic vibes. That really put me in mind of that. And I just thought it was fascinating how Deadpool never addressed that on screen, and Moon Knight has.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah,
certain elements that doesn't get translated.
I think the show is a good. It's a good start. I think it's got a lot of potential. It can go in a few different ways. The fact that it's an original character that they could actually take a chance with, because not many people know the character, so there's not that much. It's not like if you kill Batman, it's like, oh my god, they killed Batman. You can take chances with Moon Knight. Same way with Guardians that you couldn't do with big characters like Batman and Spider-Man. So
yeah, you can change it around.
Yeah,
I'm definitely interested to see how it goes. I guess it's maybe become apparent, and you can just take it as a given for me. If it's got superheroes in it, I want to see some punching.
Yeah. I think we'll get there.
Yeah, and I think, well, no, it's kind of from one of the things I listened to. Actually, again, it's Sam from Comic Talk. He had managed to see, so I do know something about the next episode.
Oh, okay.
But I won't say, because it's a bit annoying if you haven't seen. Like that's sometimes when you're watching YouTubers or stuff and they've seen like episodes ahead of. They've seen the first 4 episodes, and I just want to fucking know about the first episode. Don't just want to know about what I've seen.
Okay. Have you got anything else about Midnight, or are we good to move on?
Not in particular. Yeah, I'm just. I guess maybe not even so much more action, but I just like to see something that's a little bit like I thought we might have just seen as the backstory. Like I know Mark Spector's. I'm assuming Mark Spector is the main guy. I kind of would have just thought we would have seen a different character, because we didn't see. And I guess they're easing people into it, because it is a bit more. It's like if there was, if you'd never met Daredevil before, you're like, okay, he's a costume crime fighter, and he's got powers, but he can explain that in a kind of certain way. They're maybe just kind of leading people into it, like taking it slow to get you into to get you around the idea of it for your average person who likes the MCU and doesn't know anything about this.
I think Debate the Planet spoke about it, and they were saying that it would be actually really funny if the whole season you didn't actually see any.
Yeah.
Like every time he blacks out, then he wakes up afterwards, and he has to deal with the aftermath. Like that's just the whole season.
Yeah.
Although I don't see him doing that, I think
that's the way an indie film would do it. Like that's an alternate take. It's like I guess it's like just as I thought there. It's kind of it's got Memento vibes, but not everyone's going to want to watch Memento.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, this is like Marvel. Essentially, it's a mainstream thing. This is a bit different from your normal Marvel stuff, but they're trying. There's like, even though it mightn't be for everybody, the Marvel stuff is still kind of like you feel like you should watch most of it. Like if you're a blood to the bone nerd like me, there was a phrase never mind. Blood to the bone. It just means like. I think it's like died to the bone, but blood to the bone. I came up with it one night. That's right. I'm not interested. I think they're trying to bring people into it as much as they can, and it is a concept that, again, you would see maybe in an indie film, but maybe not everyone's going to watch indie films. Like,
okay,
the Jackal thing was cool.
Yeah.
Which we've kind of seen a little bit more.
Jerd was interesting
because that was in the trailer, and everyone's like, "Is he fucking beating up a werewolf?"
They're building up to that, aren't they, as well?
So Moon Knight's first appearance is in a Werewolf by Night comic, which is we're getting a Werewolf by Night Halloween special next year. But apparently there's a QR code in one of the scenes, and you can scan it, and you can get a free download of that issue of Werewolf by Moon Knight. Werewolf by Night, where Moon Knight first appears, which I thought was really fucking
that's
cool.
Cool. Yeah, that's a nice inclusion. Right. Other than Moon Knight, I have watched a shit ton over the last 2 weeks because I have been housebound. Do you have anything else you've seen, Jerd, that you want to go over first before I just start rhyming this shit off?
Speaking of indie films, I seen, well, maybe just foreign film. Titane,
All right, okay, yeah, I've
French
heard
film.
quite good things about it.
Yeah, mental. Not for. I
Right.
won't say anything about it because I had heard things about it before I seen it, but it didn't really help me in any way much. Just fucking weird, but great. You know,
Nothing
it's
much, yeah.
not for everyone. Bit racy, but it's a very. I can't think of the last time I seen a film that was that interesting to a degree.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would kind of watch Vampires in Brooklyn or in the Bronx, which is like a
Okay.
new kind of kiddish. It's a bit silly by the end of it, but it kind of talks about gentrification and
Right.
vampires, and it's more of a family. Like the kids watch Blade to get experience on how to fight vampires.
Right.
And then another thing that I watched was Crawl, which is on Netflix, which is a pretty kind of really an old, like it's only from a couple of years ago, but it's a pretty old fashioned like monster film. But it's like a young girl who's, I can't remember her name in Skins, but she was the younger sister in Skins, Kayla Schofield or something. She's she's
Kaya
Claire Res.
Kaya Scolario,
Yeah,
Scolario. Yeah,
she's
I know
in
what you
she's
mean.
in Resident Evil. She's played
Yeah.
Claire in Resident Evil. Yeah, who I guess I haven't seen her in much, but she's a very good American accent. But it's pretty just generic. There's a hurricane, and her dad is in the hurricane area, and he hasn't replied to her calls. So in a film, it's like, oh, fair play. But in real life, you're like, oh, you shouldn't be fucking doing that. As you're putting other people in danger. But
Yeah.
she goes to basically go find her dad, and there's stuff that happens, and it's, I guess it's not really a spoiler if you look up and see. There's alligators, pretty much is what they're dealing with, and
Wait, is this Crow?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the film you said. Yeah, Crow's great. I've seen Crow.
Yeah, but it's old fashioned but solid, really good.
It's Sam Raimi that directed it.
Fuck off.
Yeah, Sam Raimi film.
Fuck off.
Yeah, Crow. I'm going to double check this now before I lock that
How
in. But
could
I'm
I watch that and
99%
not even
sure.
notice?
99% sure it's a Sam Raimi film. We
Get
watched
the fuck
that.
out. Produced, maybe, no?
I watched that in Rome. We were on holiday in Rome one night. In
No. Alexandra Asia. Raimi
Oh.
Productions, alright, produced by him, I'd
Oh,
say.
sad. Okay.
He hadn't directed something in a while. Yeah. Yeah, Raimi Productions.
I knew it had something to do with him.
Alexandra Asia. Or I'm probably saying that wrong.
Yeah, produced by Sam Raimi.
What did he make? Let's see what this other guy. What else this guy made? Is he French? Paris. Yeah, born in Paris. The Hills of Eyes. Did he make the Hills of Eyes remake?
And he made Piranha 3D. What film?
I just want to see. Is this the one that I might have even talked about it in a previous pod?
He made Horns with Daniel Radcliffe. That's a weird film.
The Hills of Eyes remake. That was a film that I think I may have mentioned in an earlier pod. Doesn't seem like it'd work at all. It's just like it's a remake of it, whatever it looks, whatever. I fucking love that film. Do you know why? Because it was a family, and it really got to me when they're being picked off one by one.
Do you know? I didn't. In terms of horror remakes, I didn't hate it, but it's not get shit on the original. Like the original.
He made Oxygen. This guy's a fucking legend. He made, Oxygen was came out in the last on Netflix. It's she's a lovely actress.
Elizabeth. No, it was Elizabeth Moss, but it's not.
Melanie Laurent. Is she the main woman
yeah.
from Inglourious Bastards?
Yes.
So it's like that film where Ryan Reynolds is in a coffin for the whole film.
I think I did see the trailer.
She's like in a science coffin.
Right.
And she can't get out of it. So I was gonna say, yeah, I really like that. And then I don't think I watched anything else much, but I've been playing Battlefield 1 because it came on the PS Plus collection. Playing a bit of, I hadn't played in a long time, multiplayer game, and I've become a little bit addicted to it now. I haven't really played Spider-Man or Days Gone as much in the last few days. But my nephew plays it too, so I played a few games with him the last day. I'm getting my ass kicked, but I'm getting a few kills here and there, and I'm kind of I never got that good at any of those shooters. But yeah, that's about
Battlefield 1 was fun. I enjoyed the campaign and that.
I haven't gone to it yet, but
it's good. It's worth a play.
I guess Medal of Honor vibes it'd give you, would it?
Yeah. It's actually really quite. The start of it's really quite well done. The first mission, you just play as the American side, and you're not. It doesn't tell you your character's name until you die. So like you just.
Oh yeah, I think you have to do that when you're starting.
Oh, have you played that? Yeah, I thought it was really well done. Like it comes up with the year of birth and death, and then it switches to another character, and then you play as him, and then he dies, and it switches to another character, and it kind of just puts into perspective the amount of lives that were just snuffed out, like in that time. Like I thought it was actually really effective.
I was really put off at first because I had to make an EA account, and it just seemed so fucking backwards. I couldn't. It was telling me that I couldn't use my email. I kept trying to put in my email. It was like create an account or sign up for one, or log in or sign up for one. There was no option to pick which one you were doing. So I was putting in the email address that I use, wouldn't let me in. Then I don't even know how it happened. I eventually got that to work. Right. I played that mission first, and there's something about there's a little bit too much realism when it comes to visibility and shit in it. Because even when you're playing a deathmatch, fucking just smog throughout the whole match, and you can't see anyone.
Yeah,
and it's just like this is fucking. So yeah, I was very close. Like I even saying this to my nephew when I was trying to boot it up for the first time. I was like, I'm gonna turn this off. It pissed me off. But I kind of powered through it. Maybe now I'd be more interested in a more modern warfare. But I'm a little bit from my days in the past. I always found the Battlefield games more enjoyable because there was a little bit more connectivity. I don't know. Yeah. That's the right. Kineticism to them than there is to Call of Duty. And Call of Duty is maybe a little bit more arcadey.
Yeah.
I'd maybe like another Battlefield that's modern. But is it when's the newest one set?
They've just brought one out, 2042, and it's an online only game, which is why I didn't give a shit because it's so.
I don't want too far in the future. I just want like a recent conflict that I can modern weapons, but I don't want to play future again. Fuck that. And then Call of Duty did that a while back too, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they've not done the future bullshit. Yeah.
Too far in the past, too far not close enough in the future. I maybe this is kind of giving me Medal of Honor vibes, which I loved back in the day. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, that's been my week.
So I have been. I think I might have mentioned this already in the podcast, but in terms of playing stuff, I'm playing Batman Arkham Asylum. Back to that, and it's great. I mean, it is the Return to Arkham version I'm playing, which I know that a lot of people have complained that it didn't look as good as the original, and some of
it remastered to a degree.
Yeah, it's remastered, and they've took out some of the saturation, so some of it's a bit grayscale and a bit, but it's fine, and I'm enjoying it. It's just nostalgia. Going after the old nostalgia bone is what it does. You get Mark Hamill's Joker and Kevin Conroy's Batman. It's just everything you remember it being, and it's great. The Scarecrow sequences are still great, and yeah, it's still a ton of fun. I have also been watching a lot because I've been stuck in the house. It's been quite good though because there's been quite a lot I've been meaning to catch up on. First one I'll hit you with. This is a bit of a blast of the past. The new Scream movie came out. I think it's Scream 5, but it's just called Scream for some reason. I don't really give a shit about the Scream movies at this point in my life. It was something I liked when I was young and kind of grew out of. But the new one's meant to be great. I heard it's really, really good. I hadn't seen the last Scream movie in its entirety. Well, to be honest,
Scream 4.
I thought I hadn't seen it. See, when I rewatched it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So obviously I had seen it at some point. But
isn't 3 in Hollywood?
3 is the one. 3 shit. So that's.
They go to like an apartment. They go to some big house in LA or something, isn't it?
I think that's 4. No, is it not? Is it? God, I don't know. I've been watching them.
I don't know. I loved them when I was younger, but I can't remember.
No, you're right. It's 3. You're right. It's 3. 3.
Yes, I don't think I've seen 4. And I've heard 5 is good. So,
yes, I wanted to go back and rewatch them all before I watched the new one. That was the idea. So we went back and watched the first one, and that's still a classic.
Is it, yeah?
Oh, yeah, the first one's
still sure how they hold up.
It's, don't get me wrong, it's 100% cheese. Like, you really forget how Scooby-Doo these films are. Like, that really is just the same formula. It's a guy running about, a villain running about, killing people and hurting people, and then they pull the mask off, and it's it was you all along. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
But they're great. Wes Craven is a guy that knows what he's doing when it comes to cheesy horror. They are really funny in certain parts, and
Very
just
good meta kind of vibes from what I
yeah, and
remember.
just super nostalgic. So yeah, the first two were great. We watched them again, and they both held up. The second one's a really good sequel. The third one's still garbage
Did he
because
make the new one? No.
he's dead. Unfortunately, he passed away.
Oh shit.
He died in 2015. I think it was
Oh
brain
right.
cancer, sadly.
Oh.
Yeah, so no, he did not. He made, I believe he made the first four. Three is
Yeah.
garbage because three introduces the MacGuffin of a voice changer. So suddenly Ghostface can sound like whoever he wants, whether that's over the
Oh.
phone or in person. It
Okay.
just duplicates everybody's voice exactly,
And
which is
he made the original Hills of Ice. So that's
yes, oh yeah,
kind of reference back.
yeah. Yeah, it's garbage. Three's garbage, but four was okay. I watched four last night. I put it on and I was like, I've not seen this. And then they do the fake out at the start where they have the big actress being killed, and then it turns out that's in one of the stab movies, and then we get into the actual movie, and I was like, I've seen this. And then we got to the part at the end where they redo the bit for the end of the first film where the two killers are stabbing each other, trying to make
Yeah.
it look realistic. They redo that Scream 4, and I was like, I've definitely seen that. So yeah, turns out I had seen it. I just forgot about it. So yeah, I've not watched the fifth one yet, but I'm ready to watch that now because I've watched the first four, so that's good. I'll probably watch that tonight, I would imagine.
Okay, I might just skip into the fourth one, even though
But yeah, they're great. They're cheesy.
Well, I know because I've never seen the. Sorry, what's it? What would you give the fourth one out of 10?
The fourth one, I don't know, maybe a 7. Is that high? 6, probably 6, probably around there.
I don't know if America's spending hours into my telling much. And he also directed Vampire in Brooklyn, which I misspoke when I said Vampires in the Bronx. So that's why I wanted to watch Vampires in the Bronx, because I was like,
right.
They kind of say it's like that. The Eddie Murphy film, I don't know how good that was back in the day. I remember just liking it when I was a kid. The vampire tropes are a bit good. So you watched all the Scream films.
Most of the Scream, the first 4 Scream films. Oh, Scream 4 was actually his last film. That's sad. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to Screaming now. But I also watched the Ray Donovan movie. I don't know if did you watch Ray Donovan, the TV series?
Oh, with Liev Schreiber.
Yes.
I haven't, but I heard it's very good.
Yes, the TV show was great. The TV show was really, really underrated, I felt, and the dynamic that Liev Schreiber has in that show with his dad, played by John Voight, and his brothers, it's just the family dynamic and the whole kind of. We spoke earlier. Were we on air? We were talking about Catholic guilt.
Yeah,
that's very much present in Ray Donovan. There's a very kind of historical, religious undertone to a lot of it.
Are the Catholics in it?
Yes, they're Irish Catholic.
Right.
They're from Boston originally.
Irish Catholic. Now you got me interested.
And yes,
isn't the brother?
One of the brothers is played by Dash Mihawk, who you would probably know from the Punisher Warzone film. He played Soap in that.
He's a big ginger guy.
Yeah, he's alcoholic brother.
And doesn't he play the leprechaun? Did you see American Gods?
No, he's not the leprechaun in that. The leprechaun in that is Pablo Schreiber, Liev Schreiber's brother.
That's the connection.
That's the connection.
His actual brother.
Pablo Schreiber, is he not a Master Chief in Halo as well? Just now.
Couldn't tell. Oh, the new Halo show.
Yeah, I think
supposed to be shit.
I think he's Master Chief. I'm not a Halo fan. I've not seen anything about it. But
I've heard it's very bad.
Yeah, and his other brother is played by Eddie Marsan, who's an English actor who does an incredible Boston accent, and he's got Parkinson's. And see, just the thought of having to do that for. I'm doing something else, but for like 7 seasons of a TV show, to pretend
I could do that.
To pretend you've got this shake for like 7 seasons of a TV show, it is a hell of a commitment as an actor.
It's like back in the day, if you were trying to get off school and pretend you need a limp, your leg would actually get sore.
Yeah.
Or if you were one of those people who may have called in sick for work with a sore leg.
There was an actress I was reading about an actress in Grey's Anatomy who pretended she had a limp for years, and she used a stick in the show, and eventually it led to a cursed spine because she was putting all her pressure on the stick for like 5-6 years in a row. The actress ended up with a cursed spine because of it.
Fucking hell.
Anyway, talk about dedication to craft. Yeah, I watched the Ray Donovan movie, and it was nice to see because it was a conclusion to the show. The show ran for 7 seasons, I want to say, and then it was unceremoniously cancelled for no good reason. It was still doing good figures. It was still getting good viewing numbers. The season before last was setting up the finale. It was, it was putting everything in place for the following season to be the last.
Yeah.
And then it ended on a cliffhanger, and all of a sudden it got cancelled. And fans of the show, like myself, were like, "What is going on here?" But Liv Schreiber put up on his Instagram, I guess, on his social media, saying that for fans of the show, there is something coming. We will tie this up. Don't worry. And then I think it was the start of this year they just dropped us. Like there was no build up to it as far as I seen. It was just kind of, here you go. It's the film's done and enjoy it. And yeah, eventually I got around to seeing it, and it was a very fitting conclusion. I was reading some of the other reviews about it, and I'm not. That's not a ubiquitous feeling. A lot of people were actually a bit disappointed, saying that it went out with a whimper and blah blah blah. I really thought it was appropriate to the show. It was a bit of a slow burn, but the show itself was a bit of a slow burn, and the performances, it allowed Liv Schreiber to really say farewell to this character that he's obviously put a lot of his life into, and you really felt that in the performance. And yeah, I thought it was a great capper. Again,
Scream connection.
It didn't. Oh yeah, he's in Scream. Yeah, he's Cotton. It didn't end sort of definitively. Like they probably could bring it back if they wanted to, but at the same time, I think this is the end, and I think it's a fitting end. So yeah, it was great. What else? I'm up to date with Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders is on its last season, and it is shit's getting real, and the same with Killing Eve. Killing Eve, I've got 2 episodes left of that to watch. Just great TV. If you've not seen Peaky Blinders or Killing Eve, if you're American and you're not as familiar with the kind of more British shows, I'm not an advocate for British shows. 99% of the time, I prefer American drama, but Peaky Blinders and Killing Eve are just the exceptions.
What about people who have issues with period piece TV shows using modern music?
Then get out, you're wrong, because it works. And
Where's my representation in this matter? I watched the first season and it's just like, I think someone said somewhere, it's like a fucking aftershave ad. I was like, I can't.
Does that bother you?
Really? Big time. Yeah, it's just fucking, it's just a thing. I just can't.
A lot of the show, I'm not going to lie to you, a good maybe 30% of the show is just them walking down the street with all the coats flowing and the Arctic Monkeys playing, or Nick Cave. But do you know what? I like it. It works. I think it's cool. Ooh. And this that's not all the show is. There is actual scenes.
I know. I get small things that they can throw me off a show completely.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good people think it looks or whatever.
Honestly, each to their own. But if that is,
and I know it's Cillian Murphy.
If that's the reason you're avoiding it, you're missing out, man. Yeah.
What is man but irrational?
And I also watched a bunch of old movies during the lockdown, my own personal lockdown. I watched Heat with Pacino and De Niro for the first time in about 10 years. That's still great. I rewatched, you mentioned The Hangover earlier. I rewatched that.
Really?
Do you know something? I enjoyed it for nostalgic reasons, but it's not as funny as I remember.
I fucking hate it.
Definitely not as funny.
I think I watched the first one and I already didn't like it, and then they just made.
What was the first one I watched? I didn't bother with sequels, man. They were garbage. But
I think I just maybe it's an Irish thing. I kind of would assume maybe it's a Scottish thing, but I would drinking being such a part of our culture, and I don't know, being biggest borderline alcoholic at some points in my life. Seeing films like that, we're like, oh, we're fucking crazy. We drink. I'm like, fuck off. Just fuck off. It's such a, I don't know, it's so crass and, I don't know, devoid of, there's so, I can't remember because it's so long ago, but I remember watching the films and just being like, this is fucking stupid. Like, fuck off. Fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
there's something about the celebratory, like, oh, we're fucking drunk. It's like, fuck off. Like, and that's not coming from that. I'd have felt that way when I was probably drunk and literally having drinking issues. It's not that the focus of the funny on that is just it's pathetic. I think
I agree with you to some extent, but I think that first movie just hit at the perfect time for me. Like that hit at the 2009. I'd have been 14.
So I'd have been.
So that was at the stage where I thought, that's what drinking was like. Before you actually start drinking
20s.
properly. You know, when you hit like 18, 19, you're at college and you're going out for a drink every night and stuff, you realise that there's no way you would forget that you stole Mike Tyson's Tiger. Like that's okay. I know they were drugged as well, but whatever. Like that's just not really, you know. But when you were 14,
like,
it was great.
It's like stoner films that are just about being stoner films.
Yeah.
It's like that's not interesting. It's like Pineapple Express is kind of that, but I think Pineapple Express at least like it's a stupid fucking comedy action thing at the same time. It's enjoyable. You just got killed by a David Lattice, motherfucker. And like the Friday films are fantastic. Young man, you just got knocked the fuck out. They're not just about like what was it? There was some other like the highlight for Baked. Sorry, but the reason I was taking painkillers earlier is I threw up my back from an old pulling a cage in a job injury that has just been reenacted. So that's why I'm moaning. But when I move, yeah, films that are, I don't know. I just kind of felt it was idiotic, and I just didn't like it.
Yeah, I agree that when that's the whole point, it becomes a bit devoid of anything. But do you know what? It was nostalgic. It took me back to being a teenager.
Yeah, if you have a certain appreciation of it.
But yeah, it definitely isn't as funny as it once was. Sadly, but it is what it is. It happens to the best of us. It happened as well. I revisited Top of Scream. I revisited Scary Movie last year, I think. Jesus Christ!
I was literally going to say to you, like when you're talking about Scream, was like you should really watch them as a companion.
In my opinion, Scream holds up way better than Scary Movie does. And I loved that first Scary Movie film.
Yeah.
But
there's such...
It's just so
that's probably more of a film that I would have had fonder memories for, like especially the earlier ones.
The comedy in it's very forced. I don't know, and I hate saying that because I really did love that film growing up.
I'll use my strong hand.
But yeah. No, but that's everything I've been watching. So yeah, I watched. Oh no, sorry, tell a lie. I watched Adam Project, and that was good. Yeah, Adam Project was fun. It was my kind of main takeaway was just this director and Ryan Reynolds just work this formula that they've got going. I don't know. Free Guy's not the best film in the world, nor is the Adam Project, but there's a kind of heartfelt, feel-good comedy vibe that they've got and they've nailed, and it's kind of a niche, and do you know what? Long may it last, because if they're doing Deadpool 3, hopefully that will kind of tie it in the whole... Because I kind of mentioned this previously about Free Guy not needing to be R-rated to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I think it also allows you to do, like, a lot of the movies, nostalgia-bait movies, like The Goonies and, like, Ghostbusters and, like, you know, that cool kind of era of filmmaking. A big part of it is, yeah, okay, it was the 80s and we could get away with more, you know, crass language and stuff.
Yeah,
raunchy stuff. Whatever. But I always came back to, like, the whole family element. Gremlins is the same, you know, always came back to the whole kind of, like, heartfelt, you know, teen your eye kind of...
Yeah.
You know, all these...
But most of those films didn't really have that many fucking F-bombs. Like...
I feel like Sean Levy is nailing that in this era. I feel like he's really kind of breathing new life into that whole sort of subgenre. Are you... Is there anything you want to talk about, Jerd, or would you like to wrap up? Because I feel like you need to take some more painkillers.
Lie down for one. No, let me see. I'm trying to get back on the fucking... The Hickman X-Men era. I don't even know. It's like work to try and figure out what I have to read next. I started picking up that so I limited myself to the X-Men book, the X-Force book, the Excalibur book, and the Marauders book. But I've now added on the Wolverine book, and the Hellions book, which they like only kind of got added. I'm reading them. I only picked them up as they were chronologically introduced compared to what I was reading. So I'm kind of a little bit... And then, like, Empire came out, and I'd asked in one of my... Probably the Planet Broadcasting Facebook comic book group. I've asked, like, is there any point reading Empire? And a lot of people are like, that's very fucking forgettable. I'm like, okay, I won't pick it up. Because I was even just wanting to know, is the X-Men book worth reading? And then in that case, I would, if the X-Men version is worth reading, which usually isn't, if the story isn't bleeding out of the main book that you're reading, the tie-ins usually aren't worth the fucking look. So it's like, if the X-Men ones were good, I might have read Empire, but everyone was kind of like, nah. So it was, I think that was like, that came out during the pandemic, like when it first hit. So that was like a placeholder event. That, yeah. So no, I'm trying to read. I don't even know where I am now. I'm like Wolverine. Trying to keep an eye on where I am.
I would actually advise you to be careful on that, because I feel like, for me personally, that's when I burn myself out in comics. See, when I try and keep up with too much at once, quite a lot of time I will just say, sack this, and go off reading comics for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then come
Well,
back to it. Like,
I wouldn't go that far. See, that's the thing, when I have all of these different pots on the boil, where I'm like, I have Immortal Hulk. I'll go read a volume or two of that, or maybe not even. I might read a volume, and then I'll switch back over to, okay, like, I have like Ultimate Spider-Man, like physical books there that I have to read. I've X-Men Mutant Genesis, which took me so fucking long to, like, I still haven't finished it. It's just so wordy. It's Chris Claremont, so it's so fucking wordy. Right. I want to try and read the 90s stuff to get up to Onslaught. Like, I have the physical Age of Apocalypse. I want to get to that at least. And Onslaught, Age of Apocalypse, and like, so Mutant Genesis, and then I want to read Generation X. So like, I've so many venues that I can go down, so many paths. So like, I might get sick of like reading the Hickman X-Men era. I've so much other shit to read. So and like, or just pick up some random shit on Marvel Unlimited. I'm like, there's like, what I really like finding is just like, oh, there's like 2 issues here of a little run that's nice or whatever. Like, or I have I think it's drawn by Mike Mignola, and I don't know who. Let's see if I can find it here. I don't know who wrote it, but it's a Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom team up.
Cool.
I was like, just a graphic novel, and then there's like, I've seen some people talking about God Loves Man Kills, which is like, I think it's arguably the first Marvel, but it's the first X-Men graphic novel at least, written by Claremont and all, but I think it has some like kind of iffy uses of certain words that we don't normally have in our, but Claremont was using them to try and compare mutant bigotry to real life bigotry. But yeah, no, other than that, I don't know, I'm going to try and find some horror films maybe to watch. I love watching horror films these days, so pan out with my back. But yeah, that's kind of everything I've watched, played.
Sweet. Yeah, well, that was this episode. This is episode 3 officially of the Pulp Shock podcast. It's hard to remember because we're uploading bonus episodes, and because I took a week off, it is a wee bit hard to keep track of. I should have probably said that at the top, but this is episode 3 of the podcast.
I think it's the second official one that has just been me and you, is it?
Yes.
No. The other one would count as a bonus one.
Yes.
Which we always seem to go for. I just want to check the
we went for 2 hours today.
And we nearly go for 3 last time around.
We went for 2 of us. I think it was over 3 hours. Yeah, it was really.
So we can guarantee if you just see both of our faces settling, snacks.
But no, I mean, thanks for recording with me today, because I couldn't do tomorrow.
No worries.
We will see you next weekend, hopefully with more faces round the table to discuss some other nerd bullshit that will happen during the week. But until then, give us a like, give us a share, subscribe if you're into it. If you
play us in silence in the background.
If you have anything to say about our
get our views up,
opinions, drop them in the comments. If you think that, Jerd is wrong about Peaky Blinders, which he is, then let him know. Well, good to get some feedback. And follow us on the socials, on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. We will be back next week to talk about more. And thanks again. All the best.
As Mass, are you going to go for Massimo's line?
I was going to channel Mass, but if you're ready for it, then you take it away.
See you on the next page.
Nice.